Hello everyone, welcome to the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. We're doing a Facebook Live this week as we normally do, and we'll be answering any questions that you have. Just comment below on this video and we'll answer them either on this episode or the following episode next week. So with that being said, Theo Hicks, you ready, my friend?
Let's do it, Joe.
Alright, let's do it. Best ever listeners, how you doing? Welcome to the Best Real Estate Investing Advice Ever show. I'm Joe Fairless. This is the world's longest running daily real estate investing show. We only talk about the best advice ever. We don't get into any of that fluff. We've spoken to Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank, Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and a whole bunch of others. And like we normally do, we've got Theo Hicks co-hosting Follow Along Friday. Good morning, my friend.
How's it going, Joe?
It's going well, and if you are watching this via Facebook Live, then feel free to comment below and we'll either answer your question on this call or during this episode or next week's episode if we don't get to it this week. So how do we want to approach today's conversation?
We've got three best ever listener questions we're going to answer, but first I wanted to pre-congratulate you on closing another property next week.
I hope you didn't just jinx me. Well,
I don't think I did.
All right, I hope
faith
not.
in you, Joe.
Yeah. So yes, we are closing a property in Fort Worth, Texas, next week. Most likely next week, probably Thursday or Friday. We have technically until June 2nd to close, but we're closing a little bit early because we got all our ducks in a row. So more to come on that after it closes, but everything's looking good, and appreciate the pre-congratulations.
No problem. Let's dive into questions. So first question is from Darius. He said, I've been reading your book. So Darius, thank you for reading the best ever book. And it has me very anxious in investing in real estate. My problem is that I'm 26 with no money saved, and I work a job that I'm not paid well at all. Any advice, if you were in my situation, on what I should do? I'm really excited about my future in real estate, and I cannot wait to get started. So, kind of a vague, open-ended question, but no money, very low-paying job, young guy. If you were in a situation, what would be the first thing that you did? Because I was in a situation a year ago, maybe I could say something on this as well.
I'd like to hear your thoughts.
So my situation was slightly different just because my job paid a little bit better and I had a decently sized lump sum of money for my parents to invest in.
Better than what? So how much are you getting paid?
I was getting paid about $70K a year.
Okay, $70K, so you're making $70K, and how old were you?
25.
25, okay.
I had no money saved up. I was not a saver at this point. I just got out of college, and so my first time ever having money, so I just spent everything. Mm-hmm. But my parents, I had a college fund of about $20K. My parents let me use to buy a property. However, I did not know about house hacking.
And you got to use that because you got a scholarship.
I got to use that because I got a full ride scholarship.
You got a full ride scholarship to Ohio State for
chemical engineering.
Chemical engineering. Okay, cool. So they allocated college money. You didn't use it because you got a big brain, and you're able to allocate it for the house because. Exactly. Okay, cool.
And so I bought a property for $170, and I did a FHA owner-occupied loan because I house hacked, but I didn't do the 203K portion of it, which allows you to include renovations into the loan. And so that cost me around maybe $15,000 because I had to pay for the renovations myself. Mm-hmm. And so my recommendation would be to house hack. And I would, I'm not sure how much not being paid well means. Maybe if you're making $20K a year, save up for a year, save up a fourth of your income. Because I'm sure if you're a single guy, you can definitely do that. And that'll be $5,000. You can use that as a 3.5% down payment on a house hacked duplex or fourplex. And that would be $5,000. Because mine was $5,500 down on a $170,000 property.
Wow.
So yeah, you can get a $100,000 property for $3,500 down if you are going to live in the one unit and rent out the other one. And if you're not making a lot of money, even if you're not necessarily making a spread on the rent, you're still going to be paying less money than you're paying now. You're going to get the experience of real estate. Once you end up moving out and moving on to your next property, whether it's a house hack again, you can backfill your unit with a renter and start cash flowing. So I mean, that's the best thing you can do. If you have no money and or have little money and you're a single guy or have a partner that's willing to house hack. Because I know whenever we bring up house hacking on the podcast, it's always important to make sure that your significant other is in on it, because you don't want to just jump into it without her or his support. But yeah, that's what I would do.
Do we know where? Is it Darius?
Darius.
Do we know where Darius lives?
I know.
Okay. You nailed it. I only have a couple additional thoughts, but they're adding to what you said, not contradicting or coming up with something revolutionary. One is if Darius lives in New York City, Brooklyn, Manhattan, since I lived there for 10 years, I can say that it's virtually impossible to find something like that. So Darius, you need to go to New Jersey, and then the question becomes, are you okay going to New Jersey or maybe Connecticut or upstate New York and not live in the New York City lifestyle? And you just have to do a cost-benefit analysis there. But if you're not making any money or very little money, then really, unless your family's there and you have to be there for a certain reason, then you're free to roam somewhere else, and you can probably find a job that you're making as much or more in at a different place. The second thing is that the way that your question was structured, it's obvious that you're focusing on what you don't have instead of what you do have. And it's important to recognize and give yourself credit for what you do have, your current assets. And that is that you do have access to materials to educate yourself. You do have access to a computer with an email account to send us an email and for us to answer your question. You do have access to others in your market who are successful in real estate investing. You do know the English language. You do have the ability to maintain a full-time job. So you have all of these assets, and you have more assets than liabilities if you really think about it. And it's important to go in with that mindset and not necessarily think about what you don't have, but think about what you do have and how can you leverage what you do have to get what you want to have in the future. And Theo laid out the concrete step-by-step plan for doing so. And I think a lot of people tend to shoot for the stars right out of the gate, and believe me, I don't want to be the potato chip calling the pretzel salty here, because I also have gone from single family homes to very, very large multifamily, and when most people don't do that. But I got a single family house first, and then I got another, and then I got another, and then I got another. And then I went to large multifamily stuff. And if you don't have real estate right now, then the house hacking is the best approach to take. And if for whatever reason that doesn't work, then talk to some local investors in your area. Make sure you attend the weekly or monthly real estate investing meetups. Also go volunteer somewhere. I've talked about this many times before, not just for people who are raising money, because when you volunteer and you are genuinely passionate about a cause, then you become a board member on that volunteer organization or with that volunteer organization, and then you start building relationships with other, most likely, high net worth and affluent individuals. And you do it, again, with genuine intentions because you're passionate about that cause, but then eventually you get surrounded by some high achievers. And even if you're not raising money, if you're just wanting to get started, still go volunteer, because it's going to give you the perspective and it's going to help you focus on your assets, not necessarily your liabilities of what you don't have, and really focus on what you do have. and it will reinforce the mindset that I mentioned earlier that I recommend you that you have.
That's great advice. One additional thing that I thought about when you were asking that question is I know in here one of the things that it was one of the first things he says that he has no money saved up. And I remember if you want to go, at least Darius or anyone else that has that same issue of, I don't have enough money saved up, how am I going to invest in real estate? When I interviewed you on part 1, I believe it was part 1 of the multifamily syndication, your journey, you're talking about how you made $30K a year in living in New York City of all places.
Yeah.
And you saved up money for years and years before you, was it 3 years or so?
3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years to save up enough money for your first property.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be done no matter what. And I said earlier in my little spiel how when I got out of college, I made a lot of money, but I spent it all on a bunch of crazy stuff. And so I know this is like a very small tactical advice, but look at what you're spending money on and see if you can cut $5, $10, $20 a month, whether it be some recurring fee you're paying for some internet service you're not necessarily using a lot, like Spotify, or if you're buying $5 coffees every single day, or if you're going out to the bars all the time. There's a lot of different ways that you can cut expenses. And I remember when I first did my budget, I looked at it and I realized how much money I was spending on fast food, on like energy drinks, and on going out. I probably could have bought a property after a year just with that money saved up. And so that's just another piece of advice for the people that may have the financial issues. Just look at your budget and what you're spending money on, and see if there's any way you can cut any amount of money out of that budget to save up for real estate.
And using your 3 specific examples of energy, food, fast food, and going out, those are 3 really good examples that reinforces the point that it's not necessarily the lowering our quality of life by cutting expenses, but ironically or counterintuitively, we increase our quality of life if we cut out things like energy drinks, fast food, and perhaps going out. Depends on what going out entails. And so often, I know Grant Cardone talks about this, where I believe he talks about how you shouldn't necessarily cut expenses. You should pay for that $5 coffee. You should increase how much money you make in your full-time job. Well, it's important to, I'm of the mindset, it's important to look at what we are spending our money on, and does that truly increase the quality of our life? Because this is a great time, Darius, to have some self-reflection, not only setting you up for the long term financially, but to increase your quality of life along the way. Perhaps there are some things that you're spending money on that don't increase your quality of life, and should you replace them with other things that are less expensive, then that will increase your quality of life, and you'll be able to save money along the way. For example, instead of fast food, you have more healthy choices of food where you cook, or you have some other way of having food instead of going to Taco Bell or KFC or wherever. Energy drinks, drink water, or drink a liter of wheatgrass liter of water with wheatgrass. That will give you all the energy you need.
Or work out.
Going out, again, depends on what the going out entails. That's also a thought that I recommend that you think about when you're going through this.
That's a good idea. I'm going to do exactly that. Look at my line item expenses and say, is this adding quality to my life, or is this taking away?
Yeah.
And again, it is counterintuitive, but you're spending a lot of money on certain things that if you actually stop spending money on, not only would you be saving more money, but also you wouldn't be having the energy hangover, the fast food hangover, or the actual going out hangover.
Statistically, after you make $50,000, you have no 0% of increasing your likelihood of happiness than period. So let me rephrase that. I butchered that. So people who make $0 to $50,000, they are not as happy because they don't have the things that they need paid for or accounted for: food, water, shelter, other things. But once you make $50,000 and you can go from $50,000 to $5 million, your level of happiness doesn't increase based on the amount of money you make after $50,000. And that's important to know. So if we're making more than $50,000, then if we're not happy, it's not a money thing. It's a what do we focus on and what's important to us and how do we spend our time and how are we contributing and are we fulfilled thing.
Oh yeah, that's a scientific fact, and it's a huge insight to understand, because you're gonna save yourself a lot of time. Because if you're just chasing after money, you realize, based on that study, that it's not going to actually add to the quality of your life. Just specifically the dollar amount in your bank account going up. Now, it depends on what you do with that money, but if you just are focusing on the money, yeah, you don't get happier. So that's a good insight.
Good documentary to watch, and we'll move on to the next one, is Happy. It's Happy and Smiley Face on Netflix. Mm-hmm. That's what the cover looks like. So just search Happy in Netflix, and it's a documentary, and they reference the study that I just mentioned.
I'll have to watch that. I haven't watched that yet.
It's great.
Okay, so we got you covered, Darius. Next question is from Vic, and it is based off of, I believe he asked this question based off our conversation last week. Hey Joe, I thought the syndicator would also get monthly income based on the amount of ownership he has. So for example, he provides an example here. If I syndicated a deal and I put zero of my own money down on a 150 deal, my investor / partner would put up all the money, all the down payment for the loan, and the closing costs. And so Vic has no money in the deal whatsoever. His partner has all the money in the deal. Thus, he would be getting 70 or 80% of ownership, and I would get the remaining 30 or 20%, which means that I also collect 30% to 20% monthly net income that the property produces. Isn't that the way it should be structured? I think this is based off of last week when we were, or either last week or 2 weeks ago, when someone asked a question about how they had all the experience and they wanted to bring in a money partner. And we ran through all the different examples of how they could actually structure that partnership. And I guess what he's asking here is that if I have all the experience and you're bringing all the money, and we just set it up strictly 70-30, then anything, basically all the income is split. 70% goes to you, 30% goes to me on a monthly or a quarterly basis. I think he's asking for verification, if that's the case.
Will you succinctly repeat the question? I had a hard time following that.
Okay.
Maybe because I was also picking up Jack. Colleen and our Yorkie, 13-pound Yorkie. He distracted me, but yeah. I heard it all, but I didn't understand. Like, what's the one-line question?
So one-line question is if he is not bringing any money and is structured a partnership 70-30 with the investor, does that mean that per month 70% of the income goes to the investor and 30% goes to him, even though he has no money in the deal?
Well, having no money in the deal isn't relevant after the deal if he's talking about the structure. So it's two things. One is, how do you structure it to begin with? Mm-hmm. And so if he has already structured it 70-30, then yes, 70% of the distributions go to the investor, 30% go to him, if there's not a preferred return, which industry standard is there will be a preferred return to the limited partner, i.e. his investor. So if there's a preferred return, let's say 8%, then the first 8% of the cash flow distributions go to the limited partner, and then depending on how they have it set up, it's either the general partner gets caught up on the 30% that was already distributed, or it just splits 70-30 thereafter.
Exactly. Okay. So I think he was just asking for verification. Maybe he was confused at what we were talking about last week. At the end, Vic, you said that is this the way that it should be structured, and as we've talked about many times in this podcast, it kind of just depends on what you want to do and what your investor wants to do.
Yeah. I have to think of a good analogy, because I get this question a lot. We get this question a lot. How should I structure it with investors? However the hell you want to structure it with investors, but they have to buy in on it, and it has to make sense for the actual deal you're buying, and you have to make money along the way so that you care about the results too, and there has to be alignment of interests with you and the investors, so that your financial compensation is largely connected to the success of the project. And we could spend a whole 60-minute episode on different ways you could structure deals. Maybe we do that. Maybe we just brainstorm for an episode. I mean, it's really a matter of what you bring to the table and how you want to structure it and what you're looking to get out of it and what the market will command.
Yeah, my mind's kind of creatively churning right now, trying to think of a good analogy. I think I might have one, but I don't want to say it right now. So I'm gonna say that. I might say it. I'm gonna think about it. I might write a blog post on it, and then we'll talk about it.
Tune in the next week. What a tease!
Yeah, my insane analogy. Okay, so hopefully that covered your question, Vic. I believe it did. Our last question is from Pancham, who's one of our clients.
Yep.
And I was having a conversation with him yesterday, and he had a very interesting question that I did not know the answer to, and so I wanted to ask you. And so essentially, they have they found a deal that if they buy it currently, it's going to have a cash-on-cash return of 4%. So as is 4% cash-on-cash return. It's in a really, really good area. It's in an A area, and it has been updated since the 1980s, I believe. After putting in a certain amount of money per unit, they're going to be able to raise their rents such that the cash-on-cash return is now 12% after improvements. And so how do you approach a deal where when you're buying it, the cash-on-cash return is way too low to pay back yourself or your investors, but then after 6 months to a year of renovations, it's conservatively cash-on-cash returning cash-on-cash return of 12%?
A couple things. One is I'd want to know what the word currently means when they say it's 4% cash-on-cash return, because is that based on the seller's financials, or is that based on Pancham's underwriting? If it's based on the seller's financials, then it might not be 4%, because we've got to use our underwriting assumptions and how we'll operate it, not how they'll operate it. So that's number one. Number two is the 4% return. Well, it might be, if they have investors who are okay with a 4% return over the first couple years, then sounds like a great opportunity, because if you can increase rents through renovations, if the rents are below market. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It depends on your investors. It depends on, one, your underwriting assumptions, first and foremost, if it truly is a 4% cash-on-cash return based on how we would operate it. But then two, it depends on the investing group and if they're okay with 4% or not.
Okay, so I guess from your perspective, I know that the videos you invest in, there is value add, and so obviously when you buy them, they're not stabilized at where you want to be, and so do you wait to pay your investors the preferred return until it's stabilized at the new value, or how does that work?
We buy properties that can return our preferred return right out of the gate.
Okay.
And if they can't, then what we'll do is the vast majority of it will be able to be returned through the property. But maybe there's 1% of the 8% return that the operating account is funding while we're doing the renovations. And we have an operating account at the beginning so that we have the flexibility if a scenario comes up where we need to use the funds.
Okay.
So an unexpected expense, some sort of unexpected dip in occupancy, something like that. So, but the vast majority of the time we'll simply buy properties that can return the preferred return immediately.
Okay, so if it doesn't, if it dips below 8, maybe it's like 6%, then an additional 2% you'll pull from that operating bucket until it reaches above 8% again.
Yep.
Okay, that's interesting. I guess something else I'm just thinking right now, and I'm not sure if this is possible, but let's say it does 4% cash-to-cash return for the first 6 months, and then goes up to 12%, obviously you can cover that 4% with some operating. I'm not sure why I get like a bucket, but your operating budget. Could you also essentially have it so that if it's 4% this month, then we owe you that extra 4% the next month, and it kind of compounds up and up.
It accrues. Anytime if you don't pay what is projected within your preferred return, let's say it's 8%, if you only pay 4% over the first year instead of 8%, then that additional 4% is accrued to the next quarter or the next month, and it continues to be accrued until you catch up, all the way until you sell the property. At that point, it would be returned, or if there's no profit there, then they would get all the money and you wouldn't get anything because the preferred return wasn't paid.
Okay, makes sense. So I believe that covers Pancham's question, and I think the analogy I'm going to create might help him as well here. So
excellent. Well, talk about a reason to tune in next week.
Yes.
That's for sure. Well, next week's going to be a big one for us, closing on a apartment community in Fort Worth, Texas, and then this time next month-ish, closing on another property, that one in Dallas, Texas. So a lot of action. Looking forward to that. Best ever listeners, thanks for joining the conversation today. You can go read through the transcript of this episode at bestevershow.com. And if you haven't gotten the resources guide that we've put together, it's on apartment investing, and you can receive it for free. Just email info@joefairless.com, and it's a resources guide of all these free resources, and I think books too. So obviously those aren't free. You got to go on Amazon and buy the books or wherever you buy books. But it's a bunch of websites and podcasts and books and different economic development tools that you can go to and check out different market scenarios and statuses of where markets are at. So best go to or email info@joefairless.com, and we'll get you that free resources guide. Hope you have a best ever weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.